Welcome to the iNetrepreneur Radio Show. We are so honored to bring you your host, the ultimate celebritypreneur, connecting businesses and celebrities worldwide. Winner of the Networking Organization of the Year, best-selling author, magazine publisher, trainer, and owner and founder of Network Together and the iNetrepreneur Media Network from magazines, TV, and radio network. We're excited to bring you your host, Mr. Robert W. Jones.
Woohoo! Hello, everyone. Welcome to the iNetrepreneur Network radio show. My name is Robert W. Jones, and I am so wowed for you to be here today. I was talking to one of our guests before the show. We both are here in Phoenix, and it's like, wow. All of a sudden, someone forgot to pay the AC bill because it is heating up here. So if you're planning on coming to Phoenix, you might want to wait until next October because it is heating up. And either that or make sure wherever you stay, there is a nice swimming pool there because you're going to want that. I wanted to just, have a great big shout out. Last week, we had the Art of Connection Summit. And so we had about 120, 130 attendees come to that summit. It was 4 hours of action-packed information, education, connection, and a lot of fun. After that, we had our VIP session with our own Preston Weeks and David Goldberg. He came on in from Edge Studio in New York. And man, let me tell you, he has an amazing studio. And when we did our DC and New York City trip, it was such a treat to have him be our hosting venue. I want to remind everyone that our number one, let me put it up here, our number one international best-selling book, 365 Days of Abundance, and the journal, 365 Days of Journaling, are on at Amazon. You can go to mybook.to, that's mybook.to/Art of Connection, number 5. And you can get one of those books or both of those books there. It was the first time in history that a book collection, I'm going to say collection, 357 authors and 365 pages hit international best-selling status twice. So that means every author in the book who contributed a page in the journal book also became an international best-selling author because the Abundance book, where their quote resides as well, became an international best-selling book as well. How cool is that? And they are here right behind me. So again, if you want to get that book, take a look at it, it's 2 pounds, 2.5 pounds of book. And so, after you read it, it can still be used as a doorstop. Just remember that it's a great book to have. So also, I want to remind everyone that we love your likes. We love your likes. You can go to iNetrepreneur Radio at YouTube, or you can go to iNetrepreneur Radio at Facebook. And please like us. Please comment in the chat. Many times I'll look up there and I'll see a comment, and I may bring that into our conversation with our guests today. This is an interactive forum, and we want you to interact with us. Well, maybe our guests don't, but I certainly do, So also, please note that we actually have 4 magazines. So I need to update this banner. We have the iNetrepreneur Network magazine, the Contemporary Women's magazine, the Infinite Core Living magazine, and we're going to start a whole new magazine called The Art of Connection. So we're really excited about what we're doing. We're disrupting the magazine industry, just like we are in the book publication industry. Also, go to ntevents.net. That's ntevents.net. And you can find nearly 800 meetings and events that we have throughout the year, both in person and virtual. So yes, you don't even have to leave the comfort of your own home, and you can be business up top and who knows at bottom. It'll be okay, but we want you to come. We want you to connect and do business. And so, oh my gosh, so much out of the way. And so I'm very excited to bring our first guest to the show, and she's going to be coming on right now. I'm looking forward. Let me click on it. There she is, Tawni Acosta. How are you?
I'm very good, Robert. Good to see you.
It is good to see you as well. Everyone, I'm with Tawni Sofia Acosta. That's how I know you. She's owner and founder of Empowered Journeys. You can contact her at Tawni, that's AWNI at empowered-journeys.com, or call 310-488-4729. And Tawni, I'm so glad. I love it because I've been able to see us actually really both grow over the last few years. And, with that growth, I think, comes a lot of responsibility that we both own as business owners, as entrepreneurs, as, invested, community-minded people. What are some of the things that you've learned over the last 2 or 3 years that you would love to share about your journey? Not just being, in the Art of Connection book series or Network Together, but in business in general.
Oh boy, that is the eternal question, isn't it? So I think I'll give a little background. So I'm a life coach, and I do all these things that coaches do, and involve, in one respect, it is a lot of healing. And so in a way, I've had my own healing journey. So the coaching side of it, the healing side of that's something that came to me quite normally, quite naturally. The business aspect, that was what I would call the growth curve for myself, especially because I kind of came out of an engineering background, just both myself personally. I worked in information technology for ages, and that's where my family was from. So I think it was the biggest learning curve for me to learn how to promote, to put yourself out there, to just do some of the basic things. If I had to pick one word about the biggest thing that I had to learn about was embodiment. And by that, I mean, embodying what you do. Okay. If I'm going to go up and talk about coaching, well, then I have to be the recipient of a fair amount of my inner work, And where I really experienced a whole load of that was actually on the business end of it, because my mind had always ran away from that type of stuff before all of this.
And I come from a technology background for the most part as well. I know I've had multiple jobs in my lifetime. And of course, I always say, if you haven't lived 5 or 6, lifetimes by the time you're 50, you haven't lived life enough. But I also understand, as we come through these journeys and we start developing and we find our new selves and we work on these, these next chapters, as we work with our students, and in many ways, our clients are our students when we're in coaching or we're in consulting and we're in the empowerment business. I mean, there are certain fears and anxieties and personal obstacles that they need to overcome, but we also learn from them so we can overcome ours, don't we?
Oh, 100%. 100%, because all of our clientele are a reflection of where we are at. So it's like, oh my God, I'm attracting all these people with mindset issues around money, just as a hypothetical. Well, guess what happens? Most likely, I got that going on. Mm-hmm. So what does that mean? Oh, well, one, working with people, it's very easy. It's much easier. I have a barking doggy in the background. It's much easier to coach somebody about their issue, which may be my issue, but then it's very hard to coach myself about my issue. I need other people to work with me. So there's a saying in coaching goes, it's, you can't read the label inside the jar. So inside the jar is us. It's our life. And even though many things may be apparent about what our issues are to others, they're not apparent to us. And I think a lot of coaching is bringing awareness. And so when I get a lot of my awareness when, for example, I got a lot of people who dealt with anxiety and depression when I first started. And I thought, great, that's my niche. And I worked with them only to realize, ooh, I have this going on. I need to pay attention to it. And then the more I paid attention to that, the more the niche of people that I worked with changed.
I love that. And another thing that I hear a lot of out there, not that I say it, but, there's this saying that says, you start to become the CEO of yourself. And then in many ways, things become easier. And I think, in my opinion, it really is the better I know myself and the better I lead myself, the better leader I can become what is your take on leadership, and how have you applied it in your life and business?
Oh my God. Well, you framed it really perfectly, because leadership comes from leading ourselves. And every now and then, like, to keep the CEO analogy going, there are mornings I wake up and it's like, ooh, I want to fire that girl. Let's go through a rehire process here, because I want a different person showing up.
Yeah.
And I think that's good. It is to be in entrepreneurship is to always be on a growth path. It's always to be in a self-development path, because it's going to show entrepreneurship, without a doubt, will show us what we need to work on about us. Or, it can be confusing, because the issue could, a challenge could come up in an area that we don't think is even related to what really is, underneath it all.
That's interesting. I love that. Which actually brings me to another thing, and this is a conversation I've really wanted to just have with you recently. One of the words that I hear a lot, going from leadership, which I hear a lot, being authentic, I hear a lot. Now all of a sudden, this new word that keeps, floating out there is trauma. And trauma used to be defined very, very singularly, but now we've just taken this word and we've just expanded it and expanded it and expanded it and expanded it. And, I think that, in some aspects, not everything's trauma. Sometimes it's just torment. And, and understanding what the difference between trauma and torment is, because, much of our trauma isn't actually the external things that have been created. Much of the trauma actually comes from the self-inflicted torment that we impose upon ourselves. What is your take on the word trauma? And do you feel like it's being overused, underused, or is it just being abused?
Oh my gosh. Well, that's rich material, definitely. Okay, with trauma, a lot will use this phrase. Okay, there's trauma with a lowercase t, a trauma with a capital T. The capital T meaning, like, we can lean into all the heavy duty stuff like PTSD, complex PTSD, veterans who've served in wars, just extreme situations of abuse. That is absolutely trauma with a capital T. Okay. I think also we began to discover, if you discover how the mind works, the inner recesses of our mind actually don't make distinctions whether something is little t or big T. It just experience it. In one way, trauma, quote, is a coping technique. Okay. So to go, so that's just the way the neurology or the mind works. Okay. And, what can be traumatic for one person, what can be hugely, hugely traumatic for one, or another person is like, what are you talking about? It's no big deal. Okay. I think that is one aspect. There's the other aspect of trauma where we know more now than we've ever known in quite some time. Okay. And so and it used to be, if something didn't really fit in through those well-defined silos or boxes, as we could call them, it's just like, get over it. Don't bother me. Okay. You don't have this. Go away. Where now there's a lot of subtlety and a lot of quote unquote richness. I have found, I want to address the other topic. Do I feel abused or not abused? I want to give a different perspective on that. Is that, through both coaching and therapy and all those other things, there are so many different ways that we can address an issue. Okay. And, sometimes we can take that label, be it trauma or anything. And I want to be so careful about this, because I don't want to inadvertently diminish anything what somebody's going through. Okay. Yet sometimes that label becomes our flag on the sand dune of our life. Mm-hmm. We hang on to that thing and we cling on to that label. Well, things haven't gone well for me because of, and there's our flag on the hill. So I would think in part of the coaching process is, to gently start to let go of those things and to gently address that from every possible angle, that what occurs during that process and is that grip on the flag and the identity that goes with that flag starting to loosen. Okay. And when that loosens, it kind of allows other possibilities to come into our lives, because then our point of view, our perspective, what we can see and how we can see things changes. And because we can actually see and feel and hear different things or different opportunities, we can actually realize, we can actually see a way forward and maybe let go of something we've been really dug into. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and here's something else, Tawni, that I find very fascinating is you use the word labels, and for me, so much of the time, the word labels even gets a bad rap, and what I mean by that is, labels are neither good or bad. It's what you choose to fly, like in your flag. And I think when we look at labels, isn't transformation peeling off the old labels and maybe wearing the new labels, the new person that we're becoming. And it's okay to have a label because you can choose what it is that you want to wear, both on the outside and the inside, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, the question is, we have a label, and you can use a particular label or a word. Like, I'll say a word that's big for all of us. I'll just say money. Okay. I guarantee you, if I ask you or ask 10 other people what their definition of money is, or what does money mean to them, we're going to have 10 different descriptions. So what I'm going to say, there's the label, but it's how we relate to that label, how we identify with that label. Yes, absolutely. We can, you can change that label like a different suit, or it's a different identity as you were, kind of like the snake shedding its skin and having a new fresh skin. There's or proverbially, there's the caterpillar and butterfly analogy. The point is that we're in a point, we're always growing, hopefully.
Mm. And I'm glad you brought up the butterfly, because our third book in the series was transformation. And again, going back to words and the power of words, so much of the time for me, we use these words like transformational coach. And if you were to say that to those same 10 people, you'd get 10 different answers. My last question is for you, Tawni, is, as you're safeguarding transformation, safeguarding yourself as a coach, how do you embrace transformation, that which you want in yourself and that which you want in others?
Wow. Okay. There's a lot of ways I could go with this. I think safeguarding is, number one, that we all develop our community of support. And it goes for anywhere. It's really important to have a community. It's important to have people who can know how to make a safe space for another person. Mm-hmm. And second, even more profoundly, there's this thing called active listening. When one feels heard and understood, acknowledged and validated at a profound level, to me, that is one of the most profound things of holding space. And it's also one of the most profound things in an interchange or in a dialogue. So you don't have to be a coach to do this. We just have to work to, be a good human being.
Oh, thank you so much for that. Again, everyone, I am so honored. I have Tawni Acosta, owner and founder of Empowered Journeys. Empowered Journeys. You can contact her at Tawni, that's TAWNI, at empowered-journeys.com, or call 310-488-4729. Tawni, thank you so much for being on the show today, and I look forward to our reflection segment a little bit later on.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you. All right. Thank you again, Tawni, for being on the show. I cannot wait for our reflective segment at the end of our hour here. The next person I'd like to bring on, outstanding. He's from, I believe it's called the Garden State of New Jersey, Mr. Ken Hill Jr. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you, Robert, for having me on today.
I appreciate it. Everyone, I'm with Ken Hill Jr. And you know what? I'm a junior as well. Just so you know, I'm Robert Wesley Jones Jr. So we have that in common. You know, I don't know if it means we take a second seat to the senior or not, but, you know, I just like to look at us as like version 2.0. How does that sound to you?
That's awesome. And we're the same age.
And we're the same age. Thank you. Thank you for reminding me of that. Ken is the owner and founder of Resilient Warriors Martial Arts. You can contact him at Ken Hill Jr., Jr., Ken Hill Jr., at gmail.com, or you can call 609-792-0503. And, you know, and I say thank you each and every time because of his business name, because our next book coming out is on resilience. Ken, did you plan that?
No, it's just ironic because I didn't know that was going to be the theme of the next book. And I decided to change so many things about my school and what I do. And the name was one of them.
Mm-hmm. You know, it for me, it takes a lot to change a name. Although I can also say it takes a lot to change the name back. You know, and my story had an organization called Network Together, and people asked me, why is it called Network Together? Because I said, it's funner than networking apart, right? And so, but then I thought I had this big brain thing going on, and I'm like, you know, we're going to expand. We were trying to come out of COVID, and we wanted to do this, like, you know, name makeover, right? The image makeover. And then it went to iEntrepreneur Network. And then all of a sudden what I found was, after about 3.5 years, no one could spell it. And so it didn't do us any good because no one could find us as readily because they couldn't spell it. So now the membership arm is back to Network Together. But there is a lot of thought, like time, energy, and effort that goes into creating a name. And this is your new school. Why resilience?
Well, it really defines my team. You know, when you get to know them and you learn about their journeys in life, you'll see that so many of them, really all of them, have been through so much. Mm-hmm. And they were able to overcome it, or they are overcoming it. You know, there's still some things that we're all working on at any age, but they never give up. And they do look back, and a lot of people say that's a negative, but they look back as a way of saying, look how far I've come.
Yeah. You know, I think of that, and actually, I wish I would have mentioned it, but maybe I will next time, because one of the things I love about Tawni's business name, and, you know, and I ask different questions, you know, each time, is Empowered Journeys. And I think so often of the time, it's like we look at a starting point, you know, what was that igniter to start the journey? And then sometimes we look at the end point. But for me, most of it's everything in between. It's those steps of the journey that take you from here to there. And, you know, and many times it's not the way that you think it's going to go, but it's even more beautiful and maybe even more treacherous. You know, tell us your thoughts on, you know, the journey.
I had to learn that because I was, you know, raised to, okay, you look at the prize at the end, and that's what I focused on. And too many times I never got that prize. So I felt like it was a waste of time for me to even pursue it. But as soon as I learned how to enjoy the journey, it didn't matter if I never reached that prize that everyone told me is at the end, because I enjoyed the journey so much that many times I didn't care if the prize came or not.
You know, and that's I think that really is a high level faculty for any person to understand. And doesn't that make life more beautiful? Because the time, the effort, and energy to go through that journey, And if you're also even enjoying the opportunity of pain through that journey, doesn't that make, let's say, that endpoint even more satisfying?
Oh yeah, and that's pretty much how my life has been, because my big thing when I was 22 was to be able to walk by the age of 35. And even though 4 doctors said I wouldn't, I focused on enjoying what I was doing until I at least got to 35. And then I realized the closer I got to 35, the more I wanted to do. And the more I did, and 35 is long gone, and I'm still walking and I'm still doing well. And that's what makes this whole journey, just such a pleasure.
Well, as we learned from Cheryl and Howland, you'll be 35 forever. It's just the postage and handling that keeps changing, right?
Yeah.
I know that you went through a little bit of a health scare here recently in the last year, and it probably conjured up a lot of the those thoughts of like, oh my goodness, Ken, you're not going to be able to be that same person. You're going to be confined again. You're not going to be to operate at the level that you've always wanted to be. And you did what I believe that you always do. You said, okay, you're giving me the odds, but I still have odds. Just because it's improbable doesn't make it impossible. And you did a little bit of the impossible. And one of the things that you want to bring back to your life is getting into competing again. So what I wanted to ask was, about, where are you at right now on your health, and where are you at right now in competing in the world of martial arts again?
Well, that's a great question. Health wise, I'm probably as strong now as I was 15 years ago.
Mhm.
And that's only because I realized how important consistency is. When I got away from doing my routine and working out and training is when I started to see myself fade as far as strength. And I was like, oh no, they're going to be right. I am going to end up in that wheelchair. But I really shifted back to, my old ways of doing things and added some new ones. And in January, I competed and came in first. And a month ago, I competed and came in third.
Mm.
And those are things I never thought I would do again. But I just said, you know what? Let me see what happens. And it's been wonderful.
I love that. And another thing, it's really interesting because we haven't talked about this, and there's the fun side. There in any business, there's always that fun side. It's what you do, and in every well, and unless you're trying to get by or you're just really just money motivated, and that's all. But for the rest of us, we love to love what we do, and we want to love what we do, and we want to spend more time doing what we love. But there's also the icky part. There's these other business things that go on all the time that we have to, the have tos, right? And of course, we can off shelf, some of these things, but we can't off shelf all of those things. What are some of the things that you love about your business? And what are a couple of things it's just like, oh man, I got to get out today and I got to do that one thing. I don't want to do it, but I'm going to do it anyway.
The hardest thing for me is self-promotion.
Mm.
And I've been hearing so many times from people, no, you got to go out there and talk about what you do and how you do it. You got to be more visible. You have to do this, you have to do that. And that's the hardest thing for me. But one of the most rewarding things is a phone call I received last week from a student I haven't taught in 5 years. And she said, what's going on? I said, well, we're just training right now. I said, haven't opened the new location yet. She said, I'm coming. I
Mm.
said, what do you mean you're coming? She said, I was your assistant at the last school. I'm coming. Well, what makes her so special is she has Down syndrome.
Mm.
And when I met her years ago, they didn't give her much of a chance for life at all. That her expectancy was 30 to 35. And to hear her with that same energy that I remember from before, and her mom getting on the phone and saying thank you, and I was like, for what? She said, you just changed my daughter's life years ago, and she's never forgotten that. Well, in a few months she'll be 44 years old, and it's just such a blessing to have that phone call, and I can't wait to see her again, even if all we're doing is training and she's just hanging out with us.
I love that. That is amazing. I can't, you know, and it does make me wonder about our lives and living a great life and how much people we do affect that we never know. And then every once in a while, you know, you get that tip of the iceberg that comes back and, you know, just makes you know that I'm doing this, and it's not just an impact. It's, you know, I hear impact. It's one of those words that I hear all the time, but I think it really goes back to, it's like I'm making a difference that opens up space for others to also make impact. And I think that that's what's the beauty about being in a place where we help, we serve other people, you know, in another place that we serve. And I think, you know, one of the things that not every person has ever had martial arts in their life. And so they don't, you know, and many times you can see the physicality of martial arts. And, you know, and for many people, they see like, oh my goodness, well, I'm not going to be a world champion. Heck, I may not even be able to get off the mat after I get thrown. You know, but martial arts is so much more, Ken, and you know this better than anyone, than the physicality of it. And there's so much to, I like to say, the mindset and the spirituality of what's invoked when you're in the space of practicing the martial arts, and some of the skill sets that are learned and practiced can also be brought over into business. And what are some of the mindset skills that you've developed that you also bring over into your business that makes your business so successful?
Well, our number one thing is we do everything with integrity. There are many times I could have compromised on what I do and how I do it just to make money. But I've never been in a business since I've been an entrepreneur, which has only been for 5 years. I've never been in that mindset that I only wanted to make money. If, like you said earlier, if it wasn't about making a difference in people's lives, I didn't want to be a part of it. And I've had many offers to do many things, and I just told them politely no. And it wasn't that it was not a good thing, it just wasn't the right thing for me. And I'm very patient, and that's another thing that martial arts taught me. And because of that, I know things will fall into place when they should, which is not always when I want them to, but it's going to be so rewarding in the end that I never lose sight of it.
Yeah, what a great way to look at it. You know, and it reminds me of something else that, you know, that we talk about. You know, everyone has them, and I call it the struggle. You know, everyone has a struggle, and, you know, when someone's facing that adversity and they're coming up against that struggle that seems so high, you know, it can't be overcome. How do you help people get past the struggle so they can keep on achieving, and they can keep on, you know, living their life the way that they were formed to be?
Well, to piggyback off what Tawni said earlier, I learned how to listen to people instead of just hear them. So when I listen to them, I learn about them. And then it gives me a way to answer them. Because even my program is the way my philosophy in life is. There's no such thing as one size fits all. You know, what I say to one person may be great for them, but may not be so good for someone else. So I take the time to find out what obstacle they're trying to overcome, and I do everything I can to help them. And sometimes that means saying, I don't know. You know, so many people feel like they have to have an
That's
answer.
A tough sentence. That's a tough sentence. I don't know. You know? And there's a fear to that. There's a fear attached to that. Like, oh my goodness, if I don't know, I won't be their coach anymore. You know?
Right.
You know? But sometimes maybe that honesty, that authenticness may actually endear them to you even more, right?
Yeah, and that's what has happened. And they're like, "What do you mean you don't know? You know everything because you're an adult and you're this age and you're." It's like, no, I don't know. I've never encountered that. I really don't know that emotion, so I don't know. Do I have your permission to ask people that I do know what they would do, and maybe they can help you? And they're like, "Well, yeah, that'd be cool. I would love to hear something." So that's how I make that shift when I don't know, because there are times I just don't know.
Oh, I love that. So, my last question is, and I love asking you questions of, and you you choose little ones, to work with. You choose the kids. And I can only imagine having a whole school of kids and getting them to effectively create change quickly and sincerely and efficiently. Why for you, when really so many martial arts schools don't focus on kids, why did you choose to focus on kids?
Well, the biggest reason is I have patience. My oldest daughter is autistic, and I didn't know anything about autism, special needs, or anything till she was born. I had to learn different ways to help her communicate with her, understand her, to navigate her through life. She's 25 years old now. So now when I see other kids that have similar struggles or struggles that I had growing up, because I didn't know I was born with a nerve disease till my early 30s, but I was always falling down and didn't know why. Some people thought I had too much to drink, and it's like, no, I don't drink at all. But when I see these kids, their dreams are so big, and they have this like a lot of energy. So I teach them how to use it positively instead of, a lot of times the parents become my biggest students.
Right.
Because the parents always want them to dial it down or change who they are. And I actually teach the parents that it's okay that they have that energy. Just teach them how to use it in a positive way and a productive way, and you'll be amazed by the results. And that's why I love working.
I love that. That is amazing. Well, Ken, we're at the end of the segment. Everyone, Kenneth Hill Jr. He's the owner and founder of Resilient Warriors Martial Arts. You can contact him at kennhilljr@gmail.com or call 609-792-0503. And Ken, I mean, it amazes me all the time. I have to have a radio show for you and I to get to chat like this, right? But I also have a daughter that's 25 years old, and my daughter also has, she's also autistic. And so it's just, besides our age, we even have daughters that are the same age. So what coincidence is that? Or is that a coincidence? Again, Ken, thank you. Right. No, there's not. Ken, thank you so much for being on the show today. I appreciate you. And, every time I listen to you, I feel like I've grown at least a half an inch. So, maybe I'll be 6'6", in the next couple of years. So thank you for that.
Thank you for having me on today.
Wow. Oh my gosh. I mean, Come on now, Tawni Acosta, Kenneth Hill Jr. I mean, are we having some love today? Yes, we are absolutely having some love today. And speaking of that love, I have our very own Zabdy Love on our show today. Hi, Zabdy. How are you?
Hello, Robert. It's so good to be here with you. How are you?
I'm doing fine. And see how I did that lead up? I even held you off because we got Love coming into the room, Zabdy Love. So
Yes.
Zabdy Love, she's owner and founder of Zab Warrior LLC. You can contact her at zabwarrior@gmail.com. That's Zab, Z-A-B, warrior@gmail.com, or call her at 602-327-4388. Yes, when I see that number come in, I'm like, oh, that's Zabdy. Zabdy, I mean, I don't know what you've thought, but I've learned so much in this show today, and I am so proud that I get to spend time, whether virtually or in person, with Tawni and Ken, and I also get to do that with you. And we've gotten to know each other, quite a bit. But one of the funnest things that we had together was doing this thing where we went to Washington, D.C. and then New York City, and we got to celebrate with the world, didn't we?
Yes, that was phenomenal.
In that experience, Zabdy, I mean, I believe that life unfolds for you. And, there's been a lot of turning pages, and it's just going forward, and you're getting to really write more chapters and write more chapters and write more chapters in your life. And, and a lot of times we do focus in on the struggles. We do focus in on what we need, or, we focus in on avoiding what we need. And not always do we focus on some of the celebrations as well. And I think a lot of times it's about overcoming, but isn't it okay to celebrate the successes too?
Absolutely. That's what helps us reset so we can keep doing what we're called to do.
I love that. So let's get into it. One of the things that I've found about you is, you have this ready desire to say, I'm just gonna start soaking things in. For so long, I've been, in our conversations, you've been taught, you've been trained, you've been shown a certain path. And for me, it feels like, you kind of had this linear track going on, but in many ways, you weren't actually the change agent of the journey that you wanted for your life. And then all of a sudden, one day, whatever it was, some change agent happened, and it was just like, wait a minute, this is my life, and this is what I want to do, and this is what I'm going to create, and this is what my legacy is going to look like. What caused that? Was it a something or a someone, or was it a community of things that helped you create this change?
Yes, Robert. Well, thank you so much. I want to say thank you for taking the time to have me on your show. I feel like it's such an honor to be able to share my story. And absolutely, it was a series of events, and I journal a lot. And I realized that in my journals were filling up with a lot of anxiety. I would write, I'm stressed out, I'm anxious, I don't understand what's happening. And I had a great conversation with God all the time. But it was just looking back at my journals and feeling this overwhelming anxiety. Like, where is this anxiety coming from? Why do I feel like I'm unhappy in this marriage, in this life? I'm giving everything I possibly know is my best, and yet still I'm sinking in some sort of unhappiness.
Yeah. And that unhappiness, it keeps piling on. It keeps piling on. And when you have that sustained unhappiness, it starts to feel like you don't have the ability to pursue your own happiness. Isn't that correct?
Yes, absolutely. It was me discovering that I was living a life for others. I was born into a family where church leadership was the calling. We were called to be church leaders and live this, we called it the glass house. So anything you did, you were responsible that you were an image. It had to be a perfect representation of Christ, a perfect representation of Christian life. And so that brought about this need to always be performing and expressing myself in a way that others are going to feel accepted and loved and wanted. But that left me feeling empty and void of what I really wanted to express and what I really wanted.
Well, you know, and it's really interesting because, you know, who can lead that perfect life? And you know, here it goes back to my thoughts is, you know, what is perfect in the way that I designed it is certainly, I don't believe perfect in the way that you would want to design it. And I think that that's where you really started taking those steps and you started learning and you started looking around and you started finding ways of, like, you know, if I'm going to get out of this abyss, you know, I'm going to have to learn how to create, you know, a certain engine of empowerment. And so what are some of the things that you started doing to create the power to get out of the muck and start, you know, standing on your own foundation to find yourself?
Yeah, it was really leaning into my creativity that I did not know how to express. It was discovering that I had a desire to express myself. I didn't quite understand that lack of self-expression was what I was lacking, that I didn't have the freedom to really express myself because I was in a high controlled environment. And it was until I started expressing myself through dance, through connection outside of when it really started, when our marriage at the time, I was married to a pastor's kid too. And our marriage was just starting to fall apart. We were both very unhappy and we both wanted to take our own path, but because we were both pastor's kid, we felt like we need to fit into this mold. We need to follow the example of your dad, a pastor, and my mom, a pastor's wife, and be this, you know, so-called image of a continuing legacy. And that's where the deterioration started really happening, until he started doing what was honoring for him and I started doing what was honoring for me, is where it really began to unfold, to be like, there's something bigger here for us.
Yeah. You know, and one of the things that I look at too, Zabdy, and what makes me so appreciative of who you are and the mold that you had to break is because, you know, not often do I look at it this way, but I look at things, you know, from an observational standpoint. I mean, you're Latin, yet you're also not Catholic, you know, and being a female, and very much in certain realms, the Latin environment is very different on how men and women are also treated in that particular culture of the world. And so here you are, you know, a different, you know, style of religion, coming from a different country, being in, you know, in some respects, a machismo type of environment, and then having these unrealistic expectations put on you. I mean, there had to be a lot of time in your life where you thought, you know, it's just like, you know, God, what am I, how am I, where am I going to serve you? I can't even be me. You know, there had to be some type of just ridiculous frustrations where you just felt trapped.
Yes. There was so many of them. And just to give you one simple example, women in these communities want to express with jewelry and makeup, and because it's art on us, but because we are taught that any type of not natural look is offensive to God. You're saying, God, you didn't make me beautiful enough, so I have to wear makeup, or I have to wear jewelry or nail polish. And I started facing some of these fears by going to speak into women's shelters. I said, well, fine, there's bigger problems. Some of these women in these women's shelters are experiencing domestic violence. I'm going to go and speak to them. And as I speak to them, I'm going to put a little nail polish on and a little bit of jewelry and see how that really feels. I was starting to challenge the rules. And as I was going into these spaces, I was not myself because I was breaking the rules of wearing nail polish and wearing jewelry and wearing these pants. And it was like, my heart melted as I heard the stories of these women and the real life experiences, the things that were really bigger than myself. And I started questioning God. I'm like, God, this is bigger than really this art on my body. Like, there is so much more bigger problems here than what the church is saying. We can't wear this, or we can't wear that, or we can't express ourselves this way or that way. And challenging those rules is where the real breakthrough started coming in, because I was in a way defying the rules of the church, but I was in service and in love for others. And that's where my character really started just outboxing. I started really coming out of my box.
I feel like, the greatest coaches come from the greatest breakdowns. And, and when you have those great breakdowns, that's what really allows you to get to those great breakthroughs. And that's what allows you to serve others. That's what allows you to understand with a deeper sense of emotional intelligence, what you're hearing and listening to. And I think that, you're coming into your own on that, Zabdy, and you're starting to become that, what do you call it? The fire starter. And so, the name of your business is something that's really cool too, because, you see the word Zab and a lot of people may not know that, it's more than just Zab. There's actually meaning to each letter in the name of your business, Zab Warrior, which is really interesting, because then we have Kenneth Hill and he has Resilience Warriors. Now we're just going to have to go over to Tawni and say she's going to have to be Empowered Journey Warriors, and we'll have a bunch of warriors. Yeah. So come on.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about the name of your business and what does each letter stand for?
Yeah, thank you. Well, ZAB stands for zealous, authentic, and brave. At first, when I first started, it was like, I'm zealous because I'm passionate about what I'm doing, and I'm brave because I'm going for it. But I didn't have the authentic part, because I didn't really know how to be authentic with myself until I went into a transformational journey that was a coaching experience that changed my life. It really brought the insides out. It's like it turned my shirt inside out, and everything inside of me was like, whoa, what am I pretending not to know? What am I pretending to hide? Who am I pretending to be? And it was as I was beginning to ask all those questions, the authentic part was born within me, and that authentic part of Zab really birthed. And it was like, the warrior part comes from the spiritual part, the spiritual warriors. We are all warriors of this life and this journey, because we're all going through a series. It's school. Life is a school, and we get to learn the next level. So that Zab, zealous, authentic, brave warrior, was birthed at a time where I was experiencing a breakdown of my marriage, a breakdown of my identity, my mother passing away, a birth of a child, all within a short amount of 2 to 3 years. All of this was happening, and a financial breakdown. And so it was losing myself, my old self, to find my new self.
I love that. That is awesome, Zabdy. Everyone, I am with Zabdy Love, a warrior. She's owner and founder of Zab Warrior LLC. You can contact her at zabwarrior@gmail.com. That's zabwarrior@gmail.com, or call her at 602-327-4388. Zabdy, thank you so much for being here with us on the show today. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and take off the banner here, and I'm going to bring back both Tawni and Ken, and we're going to go ahead and head into our reflective part of the show.
Thank you, Robert.
You are welcome. So, Tawni, wow, we got to take in quite a bit today. And I really just wanted to get your reflection on both, Ken and Zabdy, and what may be a takeaway that you have from listening to them?
Wow. I mean, Zabdy's journey I can relate to very personally. And I think also the beauty is uplifting all of ourselves in our journeys and knowing that our journey really becomes, it turns from this element of total challenge and all the negative things, and it turns into our mission, And then, from Ken, it's like I could say when I was a young child, martial arts was a big deal to me. And it gave me a lot of things that I really needed as a young kid. And if it gave me anything, it really did what I really discovered about myself. And this is what I hear from Ken without him saying it, is that I realized I had power at a young age. And I never knew that until I did martial arts. And so when I'm hearing Ken speak, I think that's where he's speaking from.
I love that, and I also appreciate everyone, that just that power of listening and being present. And that to me is like an art form, a science, and a gift, all wrapped up into one. So I love that. Ken, you were able to come on to the show. A reflection for both Tawni and then Zabdy.
I absolutely connect with Tawni when she said earlier about being an active listener. That was something that I had to learn, because as much as I was hearing people, I realized I wasn't listening. They were just words to me. And when I learned that, it just changed my whole life. And then when Zabdy said you have to lose yourself to find yourself, I know what that feels like too, because I mean, I went through drug and alcohol rehab, and I attempted to take my life 6 times. And I realized I really didn't know who I was, but who I was, I didn't like. And as soon as I learned how to just be me, my life has been golden ever since.
Yeah, that is so amazing when we go inside, how much things around us change on the outside, because it's very hard to change the outside without the inside. So thank you for that, Ken. And Zabdy, a reflection, concerning Tawni and Kenneth.
Yeah, thank you so much. Tawni, I really resonate a lot with the trauma conversation and how the big T, little t. And just as I've been learning more and healing through what has been my trauma, it's so interesting how the stress underneath all of it has really, it just unravels. It just teaches us to get out of our fears and really get into what we're called to do. And so Tawni's connection on a reminder how everyone's story and journey, it turns around to now really be a blessing and a desire for us to go and serve someone else, because that's really what coaches do. What we're going through, we are a reflection to be able to help those people that are best suited for us. The universe will send us exactly who we are ready to receive and serve. And with Kenneth, it was so beautiful to hear that story of that person that was in your class, and a reminder of how you're impacting and giving and giving. And don't forget to be able to receive the clients that you've given, and also honor the work that has been planted years ago. It's like a reminder that you planted seeds years ago that are now trees. So it's a beautiful honor. Thank you so much for being that example of what is possible for the rest of us, Kenneth. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Zabdy. And, thank you everyone for being on the iNetrepreneur Network show today. I hope I did my job well, because I know that you all did your job well. And that job was just saying your truth, reflecting with your story, and being present and here for each one of us that's been in this moment today. And again, I want to thank you for all of that. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up my show here. And again, thank you so much, everyone. Again, everyone, we are here almost each Thursday from 2:30 to 3:30 Pacific time right now. Please look for us. Please like us. Please subscribe, so you'll know next time. You'll get a notification saying that we're coming online. But until next week, make it a great weekend, and I look forward to seeing each and every one of you next week. Thank you.
You've been watching the iEntrepreneur Show, a production of the iEntrepreneur Radio Network, with host Robert W. Jones. Join Robert each week as he visits with new and exciting guests who inspire, teach, and mentor entrepreneurs worldwide. Follow Robert each Thursday at 1:30 p.m. Pacific, 4:30 p.m. Eastern, and 8:30 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time.